They were home so fast that Heather felt disappointed. She wanted to keep driving down those one-lane roads, peering over everyone's white rail fences at their tennis courts and orange groves. Rancho Santa Fe was a different kind of money from any other that Heather had ever experienced. It was a cross between Hollywood Golden Age glamour and historic Spanish estates. The beach was 15 minutes away. You didn't get traffic like you did in L.A. The weather was perfect all year round. The light was better. There were only a few thousand residents, and they were wealthy beyond belief. Even Bill Gates had a horse property there. Heather had felt special when she discovered the area, as if knowing of its existence was its own reward. It had been her push to move there. It was perfect. It had everything anyone could want. "I thought everyone was leaving California," her husband Jeff said. "Because they can't afford it," Heather said back. They had kept their house in Texas. It was from the before times, pre-rich. It was modest, but close to family. They had paid it off as soon as their fortunes changed. Jeff owned 17 companies, but he'd made most of his money investing. He had been doing it since he was a child. Just over a year ago, he had started to get lucky in a way that had felt like the magic he read about in books. It seemed like every month Jeff came home in shock to give Heather more good news. "I'm making $2 million this year. I'm making $6 million, $18 million, $35. I have $115 million. Then he stopped telling her. It was scary to have so much money, to just keep making more. The Parkers had become richer than they had ever imagined being, and suddenly they'd owed it to themselves to do everything they had ever dreamed of. It became almost a burden. Trips to Paris, the Bahamas, an RV they never used, toys, the best of everything. And the kids, think of the kids. Jeff and Heather needed to give their daughters the life they themselves had never had. Cars and clothes and bags and horses. "Piper and Maple are going to have rich friends," Heather had insisted one night in bed. "Friends who get them places, the ones I never had." She meant the ones who had been taken from her. Heather had grown up next to a horse stable. Every weekday after school, she would jump over her back fence and land in her dream world. Every weekend, she would be there from sunup to sundown. Heather and her friends had called themselves the Barn Kids. They had spent practically every waking moment together, had sleepovers and pool parties. But when Heather had turned 12, her father left. He didn't go far. He stayed in the same town, just with a different family. New daughters, a few sons. He didn't pay child support, and Heather and her mother loved him too much to ask for it. Heather's horse had been sold. For years after, well into her 20s, she wore a bracelet with the horse's name on it. It was like she was wearing her old life around her wrist. Heather lost her barn friends. She never made good friends again. Perhaps she had been too afraid, not just of how quickly she could lose people, but of how quickly they forgot her and moved on. Her home life had changed rapidly. All the things that used to protect her family didn't work anymore. Locks and friends and government officials. And Heather felt herself change with it, become harder, more dissatisfied. She couldn't afford to be herself anymore. All her best parts had been sold off. Heather used to imagine what her life could have been like if her father hadn't left. How she could have stayed in that halcyon childhood forever. How easy, how perfect things could have been. She could have kept her horse. She could have kept her friends and her barn and her family. It seemed to her that she'd been doomed to spend her life trying to get back to that place, to the paradise she'd lost. Until she and Jeff ascended by accident. They had money, and suddenly, they owed. They owed it to themselves to live every dream, to take everything that had ever been denied them. They owed it to their children, to right every wrong ever done to them.